I'm Brad King, and this is Stories in Steel. On this episode of Stories in Steel, we travel to the secret lair of Hot Wheels owner Larry Wood to learn how he became known as the Godfather of Hot Wheels. We talk about how a magazine inspired him, his own love of mechanical mayhem, and how the job of his dreams came to fruition. Also joining us is Carson Lev, one of Larry's colleagues at Hot Wheels, who brought along some interesting insights and stories of working with the legend. Check it out. We're sitting here in the top secret Larry Wood location, Elwoods Garage. And it's kind of cool because I don't really do the fanboy thing. I met a lot of people over the years, and they're just people. Well, I kind of gotta be careful not to fanboy you, because you were part of when I was a little kid. I mean, it's like everybody has Hot Wheels. That's what influences whether you like cars or not, and that was a huge influence for me. But before you got into Hot Wheels, let's go back a few years here. Let's go back to your beginning. You ended up becoming kind of the grandfather, the grandmaster of Hot Wheels. But before you did that, what got you in that direction? Where did you start? Let's go back to when you were a little kid.
Okay. First place when I was a little kid, I didn't have any car toys. I had cowboy stuff. You know, I'm in the middle of a small town in Connecticut, and we had Roy Rogers and stuff on the TV. So I was into cowboys. I had a cowboy hat, and I had the guns and everything on. And I think my dad got me a fake pony to ride around, stick with a head on it. And that was what I did for Halloween. And cowboys and Indians. We would go off and play out in the woods all day long and have a good time playing cowboys and Indians. So I never once thought about anything to do with cars. But of course, when you get older, things change a little bit, and so you get into high school, and your buddies start talking about cars, and you start, thinking about cars and everything. And I really didn't think too much about cars until one day my dad brought home a Rod and Custom magazine, or a Hot Rod, I think it was a magazine. He was a coach, and one of his guys who was reading the magazine during supposed to be working at his football or something. He brought home this Hot Rod magazine and put it on the kitchen table, just threw it down there. No reason, he just had it. And I picked that up, and it was like the switch went off, and it was like, holy mackerel, look at what they're doing in California with these hot rods and customs and stuff. And it was great. And that kind of got me going. And things like I would sit on the side of the road about a half a mile from my house, went to the beach. And on the weekends, all the rich people would go by in their cars going to the beach. In the 50s cars, come on. I mean, 59 Lincolns, 59 Cadillacs, 56 Fords, two-tone turquoise whites, all these crazy colors. And so my buddy and I would sit on this hill and watch these cars going by on the way to the beach, and of course coming back and during the day. So that really got me into more into cars than anything. But the Hot Rod magazine is what did it, because these were cars that were touched by car guys, and they would take a Chrysler Hemi and put it in a 34 Ford or something like that. So as I learned a little bit more and finally got into it a little bit, I actually started to work on cars. I remember buying my first thing I ever bought was a finned Ford flathead head. And that was the greatest thing I ever saw. I probably paid $5 for it, but it was aluminum. It had fins on it. It said Edelbrock or something on it. And this was really cool. Well, then I had to buy an engine, a block. So I bought a block, and sooner or later I read Hot Rod magazine, how to put the lifters in, how do you do this? And I did this whole thing in a garage behind my house. It was a little shed. Actually, it wasn't even a garage. It was a little shed with gloves on in the winter in a dirt floor. No engine stand or anything. The floor, the motor was laying on the ground. Flip it upside down and put the crank in and put the things. I didn't know anything about torque or anything, put it around. But I bought a triple manifold for it. And I had the heads and everything. So I had this motor laying there, and I had nothing to do with it. So I went to the junkyard and bought a chassis, 36 Ford chassis. I think it was a 36 Ford chassis with a transmission in it. We put the flathead engine in it. I remember the first time we ever drove it, my buddy Charlie was standing next to me, and I was on the seat on a piece of a box. I was sitting on the box on this chassis. And Charlie had a string going to the carburetors. And I had the clutch and everything. I said, okay, give it some gas. So I let out the clutch, and of course Charlie fell back and pulled full throttle. Man, that thing took off. That flathead ran, man. We went across the street, sideways, all the way up my neighbor's yard and everything before the battery luckily fell out and shorted out and stopped the car. But that was my first ride on my first hot rod. So we lucky didn't kill ourselves, but we had to go patch the lady's yard where the two row tires went up her yard and dug all her grass up and everything.
So what were you doing for work then?
I just had basic stuff, when a teenager, you're just doing basic stuff. When I graduated from high school, I got a job at Pratt & Whitney Aircraft doing aircraft sheet metal. I did, you'd make a bracket to hold a fuel line or something like that. The funny thing was, high school was terrible. I hated high school, just hung around with the guys that smoked and the hot rod guys and stuff. I just barely made it through high school. I get this job at Pratt & Whitney, and the first thing they tell you is you got to use math. You got to bend this piece of metal because it stretches and strings, and you got to drill these holes at certain places, and they got to be certain diameters and all this stuff. And I'm going, hey, math. There's a good reason for math, and, but there was the first time anybody ever judged me on what I did with my hands. Before that, it was with 10 times 10. I don't know, who cares? But when they finally said, take this piece of metal, drill some holes in it, and bend it, and we'll inspect it, and if it's right, what we want, we can use it. It was the first time anybody ever used my hands for a way to grade me. And I think that was the biggest thing for me. It was a complete breakthrough for me. So I did this job for a couple years, and I moved to Hartford, and I joined a hot rod club. I drag raced the Hemi, and I had a bunch of other cars and stuff. And one day I'm sitting there working on this metal thing, and then I worked the midnight shift, which was great because you could party up till midnight. And then you'd go to work, you didn't have to worry about going home or anything or sleeping all night.
Great reason to have a job. I can work and I can still do the party.
I could party all night. It was great. So one day I turned around, the guy next to me was like 40 years old, and he was doing the same thing I was. And I'm 20 or I said, I don't want to do this anymore. This isn't what I really want to do with my life. I had been drawing all my buddies' cars in high school. Just starting to draw their Rancheros or their 56 Chevy or whatever it was. I was drawing them. And I had a whole pile of drawings laying around, so I went back. Oh, we'll get back to the magazine again. I opened up Hot Rod Motor Trend magazine this time. And there was an ad for a school called Art Center. It said, we will teach you to draw cars and be a car designer. And again, watching these all 50s cars go by, thinking, oh boy, I could draw something like that. It'd be really cool. So I took all my old drawings and I went to my mom, who was an art teacher, and we made a kind of a neat portfolio. It was actually shaped like the artist palettes, the thing with the finger hole in it and the brushes. So it was shaped like that. It had a hole in it. It had paint colors around it. I drew a paintbrush on it and stuff. And then I pasted all these pictures of all these cars that I had drawn for my friends. But come to find out, Art Center is going to teach you how to draw. So they don't really care how good you draw. They want to see if you have imagination. They want to see if you got a rough idea of perspective and you've got all this other stuff, So Art Center looked at that book, and now that I think about it, at the time I didn't think there was a chance in hell that they would have accepted me. But when you think of Art Center, they're looking for somebody to take it the next step. So I had some pretty decent drawings in there for just pen and pencil.
Plus you had the imagination how you presented it. So
exactly.
It wasn't just here's an envelope with a bunch of pictures.
8.5
here's
by
the
11.
presentation.
That was all what my mom told me. She says we got to make a statement,
Absolutely.
So I get this letter. I'm going to California and I'm going to draw cars. I mean, come on, the world isn't getting any better than this. Get on an airplane, fly in there, and I remember this airplane came down and it never landed. It just kept going. And I looked out the windows and there were houses far as I could see, cars and freeways and houses, and the plane just never stopped. It just kept going and going and going. I said, I got to go home. I'm way out of my league here. At home I had one street went by my house and you could fire a bullet and it wouldn't hit anybody, So the plane landed, and I literally almost went back on the plane and went home because I just said, this isn't my thing. But I got my portfolio and I got a taxi, and of course he drove me all over LA to make money, and he finally dropped me off at Art Center. And when you first get to Art Center, they give you a list of places to stay. I said, okay, where am I going? She says, well, this is 3rd Street. You can just walk down there until you find a place to live. I got my thing and I got my map. I must have walked 3 or 4 miles till I finally found a place that would take me, because other places were already full and stuff. And I finally found a place, and what they did is the 3rd floor of their house was the guys' art studios for all the Art Center students. They would feed you, they would keep you there, take care of you and everything. And so there was like 8 of us on this one floor, and we all had little beds sitting on there. But we were never in bed at Art Center. You were working, you were drawing all night. So we had everybody had their own little place. And the cool thing was out in back with the girls. They had their own little building out in back, and they had the same thing. So at breakfast and dinner, you had all these good-looking girls showing up. It was great. We had a lot of fun, and we played practical jokes on each other and everything. So it was a great place to live. And then Art Center, they didn't let me draw a car for a couple of years. We had to do colors. We had to do perspective.
Lots of perspective. I'm
lots
sure.
Of
Shadowing,
yes. Perspective, shadowing, perfect thing. Yep. For years, you never got to draw a car. And we started with 50 in the class, and we graduated 6. So that was Art Center. They were tough. They were tough. Half were gone the first year. Second year, half were gone.
Did Art Center chase them off, or did they just go, I can't do this anymore? Right?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. You didn't meet. In fact, I got called into a meeting once because my teacher was Strother McMinn, and his thing was streamlined cars. He loved streamlined cars. He said all the cars someday are going to be pointed in the front and pointed in the back. Airline, streamlined cars. I'm a hot rodder. I'm blowing blowers on the hood. I'm putting side pipes on the thing. I'm putting big tires on the back. So I got called into the meeting. Well, Larry, you're not going to make it. What? I'm crashing. I'm the king. I'm doing great. No, you're not listening to the teacher. So that was a big breakthrough when I got called into that meeting, and I went back very humble. Okay, I'll start drawing cars.
Thank you for giving me another chance.
They were right. I mean, you go to Detroit, they're not paying you to build hot rods, So graduated in 65, went to Detroit, landed in Detroit on the worst snowstorm of the year in Detroit, which was standard for them, but not for me, because I'd been in California the last 3 years. I got to the point where Detroit wasn't what I expected. It was snow, it was drawing door handles. When you're a kid, they're not going to let you do the whole car. The guy that's worked there 25 years, he gets to design the car, I had some fun. I had some creative stuff going on and everything, and it was okay. But it was like, man, California, there's hot rods everywhere. So I said, I'm going to California. Well, I had heard of a job where you were going to design aircraft interiors. Who cares? It's a job in California. So I went to this design place, and I said, I understand you're sending people to California. I'd like to go. And they said, well, what do you do? And I said, I'll show you my portfolio, blah, blah, blah. It's mostly car stuff, But I said, I can draw anything. Don't worry about it. They said, I'll tell you what, you work for us for a year. And after a year, a month. They said, well, you work for me for a month, and we'll see what you do. And then after a month, we'll either send you to California or it isn't going to work out. And I said, yeah, I'll just go on my own. So no big deal.
Sure.
So I worked for a month. It was kind of neat. The only trouble is I had been at Ford, and working for a big company, you goof off, If you work overtime, first you go out and play pool for a while, and you drink beer, and you have a hamburger, and you come back to work, and you goof around, and the bosses knew it, and everybody just, you did things. At the end of the day, there was something on the wall that you did, but it was compared to working for a small company. So I quit at noon. I went over to this company, and I walked in, and I says, okay, I'm here. I'm expecting them to tell me to go home and come back tomorrow. The guy says, okay, we have a presentation tomorrow to Sears. Here's your place where you're going to work. Here's some supplies and everything. We need this. I had to work all night. Wait a minute.
Like work.
This is work, But I did, and it was fun because I remember doing refrigerator door handles. I did a jukebox for Seaberg.
Oh.
I did the first tractor with headlights on it. It was the first time. It was for Sears. So Sears had all sorts of stuff we did. So I worked for them for a month, and then I walked into the boss's office, and I said, okay, what are we thinking? He says, okay, I'm sending you to California. In the meantime, I had gotten married. I'm driving a 63 Corvette split window. I've got a Model A hot rod, and I'm not sure if it was in pieces or running. I can't remember. But so he says, okay, you're going to California. Here's your ticket. I said, wait a minute, I got a wife, I got cars. And he says, no, here's your ticket. You're working starting next week. So I had to fly out to California.
Wow.
So I get out here, I got nothing. I had to fly back home, get the biggest station wagon I could, put my tools, put everything I had in it, put the Model A on one of those shipping companies that would ship cars and send us to California. And then I went cross country in that station wagon. So that's how we got started in L.A. And I worked on this aircraft company for a couple of years. It was called the LT-11 Lockheed aircraft, and it was the first time they did the lights in the ceiling hidden behind panels and stuff, the indirect lighting. And
so you were part of that.
Yeah, we did that.
Team designing.
Yeah,
okay.
we did
All right.
It was really a modern looking airplane at the time. I did the logo that's on the tail of every one of them. And it was a fun job and everything, but it was, it wasn't really the job I wanted, but it was paying the bills. And again, you got a wife, and now we had 2 cars and everything else. So I decide to, I'm starting to look for a job, but I don't know what I'm gonna do because I'm a car designer. There's no car designs in California, So a buddy of mine calls me and he says, I'm having a party at my house. Would you want to come by? I said, sure, why not? Well, he lived down here in the South Bay, and I was in the hills in Tahunga up in Northern California, in northern Los Angeles. So I said, okay, I'll do it. I almost didn't go, but I said, let's go. So we go down, we go to his house, and we're at the party, and there's lots of people there and everything. And his kids are out on the patio playing with his yellow-orange track with these little cars on it. I said, what the heck is that? I didn't have any kids. He says, those are Hot Wheels.
So wait, okay, so what year is this?
This is 1969.
Okay.
Yeah, 69, probably middle of summer. And Howard says, but I don't like cars. He was a friend of mine in Detroit. He says, I don't like drawing cars. I want to do something else. I want to do space stuff. Like they have Matt Mason and all those space toys, So he said, I want to do space stuff. And I thought, oh, sure, fine. I said, well, why don't you drop my name in and see if I can get an interview? Sure enough, I got a call for an interview. And I go in and I do the interview, and I didn't know it at the time, but it was Elliot Handler, who was the CEO, the owner of the company, and Hot Wheels was his thing. So he was making sure that Hot Wheels was going to the right guy. Harry Bradley had actually started the Hot Wheels. He was hired out of Detroit when Hot Wheels decided to do Hot Wheels, but they didn't know what they were going to be. They just knew they were going to be little cars that were going to go fast. So Harry said he worked for Hot Wheels for quite a while, drawing cars, trying to figure out, are they going to be sports cars? Are they going to be future cars? Are they going to be this or that? And Harry drove a 64 El Camino, was chopped, had big tires on the back, little tires in the front, red lines, 5 spokes, and he had drinking cups coming through the hood. It looked like injectors. They were aluminum drinking cups coming through the hood. And one day and it was painted bright yellow. One day Elliot Handler walked by, took a look at that and says, now that's a Hot Wheel. What do Hot Wheels have now? Big tires in the back, red lines, 5-spoke wheels, rake. It's the same. It was
a Hot Wheel.
It's the same
car.
Cool. It's the same car that Harry started doing. So Harry's a car guy, really a customized guy. So his stuff was basically the first 16 cars were hot rods and customs. And that's what started it.
So Harry was the original?
Harry was the original. He was there.
Okay.
He was there like a year before Hot Wheels came out because he did all the preliminary stuff. In fact, a very good friend of mine was in the meeting where his job, he worked in a model shop, his job was to get all the die-cast that was out there and put it on the wall so they could look at the cars that were being made. Because Elliot was having trouble coming up with this idea because everybody at Mattel said, nobody buys die-cast cars. Matchbox is already out there, and blah, 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 all these other cars, and they're not making any money. Well, Elliot's thing was we're going to do these California cars that roll fast and look good, sparkly colors and everything else, just the opposite of what everybody else was doing. Matchbox, you just looked at the car.
It just was a stock car.
A stock car. And a lot of them didn't even have interiors. They were hollow, but they had the shape on the outside. So Hot Wheels was fast, flashy, and all of a sudden you had to come up with the tracks too. So we did all the loops and all that kind of stuff. Again, Harry started, and as it went, there were more and more sets. I did all the sets for a long time. So I got a job. Howard's working with me, and then Howard went into the space stuff, and I became the designer. I had a Bob Lovejoy, Paul Tam, and another couple of other guys that would come in for a while, but they didn't have the passion that I had, so they would come and go and everything. Well, Mattel got in trouble in the 70s. They had manipulated the stock a little bit, so the stock went from $50 to 50 cents in a week. Everybody was laid off. And I remember going into a meeting, and all of us were in the meeting, and basically they said, you're all basically gone. And then as my boss walked out of the meeting, he got called into a meeting, he was gone. luckily they decided to keep Hot Wheel going, even though they tried to get rid of it a couple of times. And I was the one guy. They said, "Why don't you stick around and we'll see what happens?" But the Mattel was gone. The parking lot was empty. I was the only guy on the whole floor. I could set up a Hot Wheel track that went all the way around on the floor, and you would set the Hot Wheel car going, and it had superchargers all the way around. It would come back like 20 minutes later. It would go by, and
20 minutes later,
it would just disappear. And they would put another one on there, and I was all by myself. I even built a car to go into the parking lot that had a gate, and you couldn't get in the executive parking lot, but there was nobody in it. So I built a chopped Volkswagen. So I could drive up to the gate, reach over the windshield, lift the windshield up, the gate up, and drive in. And I would park in the executive spots right out in front. There was only like 6 or 8 cars out there. There was nobody there. There was a for sale sign on the building. It was gone. Luckily, somebody decided Barbie and Hot Wheels alone is worth creating. So they brought in somebody to run the company. And then from then on, it just took off. And it just kept going from there. I was alone for 20 years. Doing Hot Wheels. I did every Hot Wheel, every set, everything.
By yourself?
By myself. After 20 years, the parents would start picking up, or the kids that played with Hot Wheels, now they're 20, 22, 25, they would go into the store and start buying Hot Wheels for their kids, and they would buy Hot Wheels for themselves. All of a sudden, after 20 years, the sales just started to go. I was doing 10 to 20 cars a year, maybe, and then sets and everything. And now they're doing hundreds of cars a year. It's just exploded. They're doing like 8 million cars a week now. And at the time I was there, like I said, I was just in the corner by myself. And
cars.
Barbie owned the place. In fact, one day I was bragging to a Barbie lady about a certain Hot Wheel that I had done that was selling X amount of Hot Wheels. I said, "We sold X amount of Hot Wheels." She says, "Oh, we sell more Barbie horses than that." It was like, Barbie was the queen. It was probably 60% women in the company at the time.
20 years all by yourself. So is there anything that you wanted to really do that they didn't okay, that they go, "No, we don't want to do that"? Or did you have control over it?
I basically had control because nobody really cared about Hot Wheels. Like I said, I had a marketing person in me, and there was an engineer that would have to take my drawings and make them into the real models, and the model shop would make the wooden patterns and things like that. But basically, it was up to me to come up with the ideas. And one thing when I started at Mattel, one thing I always did was make the car accurate. If you take a Hot Wheel and flip it upside down, it's got a frame, it's got a engine, transmission, it's got all the parts. So I always thought that if a little kid played with a Hot Wheel, he'd turn it upside down and say, "Dad, what's this?" And Dad would say, "That's a muffler."
I'm picturing it.
Yeah,
you always looked at the bottom.
I had it as accurate as I could.
And then it had what the car was, which was
exactly. Yep.
Because it helped. There you go. Yep. You go. What is it? It's on the bottom.
Yep. And then I tried to do the cars as accurate as I could, and of course, luckily again somebody's paying me to do hot rods and customs or crazy cars, So I did, like I say, 20 years, and I remember during one of these times during this time, I said, I'm designing these for myself because I'm having fun doing it, and I finally said, these are supposed to be for kids. So I did a whole bunch of series of animal cars. It was a dragon with 2 heads, and there was a fish. I did a shark car. Did a couple of cars like this, and they sold pretty good too. Well, all this time they kept telling me these are for kids. These are for kids. These are for kids. We have to have the wheels stick out so the body doesn't rub on the track. We just have to do this. And I kept thinking, wait a minute, I'm starting to meet collectors, and people are starting to talk about collecting Hot Wheels and stuff. So I said, let me do one car that is not compatible with the track. It'll be a hot rod. So I did what they call the Purple Passion. It was a 49 Merc with skirts and an extended tail and everything, side pipes. So it rubbed on the track all the way around. So it wouldn't go through the track or anything. And it sold like crazy. And so that was the beginning of thinking, hey, maybe we should do collector line.
The track was irrelevant. We just want the car.
Well, it was at one time it was like 80-20. And then for a while, it ended up 50-50 for a while. And I think it's back to like 80-20 now, most of the kids, because most of the Hot Wheels now are very kid-oriented. But for a long time there, it was car guys. I mean, I go to a car meets and people would say, "Oh yeah, I remember that," or like you, I remember playing with the Hot Wheels when I was a kid.
What another thing that I'm sure is, as a kid, the idea of Hot Wheels stuff backfired on them, because I remember that, and parents probably said thank you, but How often did you get, as a kid, I mean, you were older, so you didn't get getting whacked with a Hot Wheel track because it was laying there.
I've heard that story plenty of times. Yeah, I got hit with that track.
Forget paddles, a Hot Wheel track and do the job. It'll get your attention.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I heard that story plenty of times. So, and then things changed. At one time, I actually had them say, during the gas crisis, they told me I had to do gas crisis cars. Well, I did a Pinto, I did a Vega, and I did a Gremlin. Of course, they all had big V8s in them and everything because I didn't tell them.
And you got to design the 5 mile an hour bumpers.
Exactly, yeah. I didn't tell them what I was going to do. I said, okay, I'll do a Pinto and I'll do it. But if you go to the Poison Pinto, it's got a blown motor sitting in it. The Gremlin's got big engine, tires and everything. It's a Hot Wheel. You're not going to do gas crisis cars. But that's what I had to go through. And there were marketing people that told me what to do for a few times. And I did what they wanted, but in most cases, I got to do the stuff I really like to do. And then later on, when we got to do the collector stuff, it was really cool because then I could go back and talk to my heroes, George Barris, I got Dean Jeffries, and I got Ed Roth. And, I'd go back and say, we're doing this stuff for the guys my age. Let's do these cool cars that they can relate to. And we did that for quite a few years, and it was really a big thing. We got to do different sizes too. We did the larger scale at the time and real detail, really nice stuff. There were some Hot Wheels we were selling for $250 at the time. So that lasted 10 years or so. And then everybody had enough die-cast. It's like me, I got enough die-cast. I don't need any more. The die-cast thing kind of died off.
So how long was you running Hot Wheels? You started there in...
Okay, I started in 69.
Okay.
Like I say, I was there for roughly 20 years by myself, and then more and more designers started coming in. I retired. I was there, 40 years. I think I was there 40 years working full-time. I retired at 40 years, and then I became a consultant for the last 10 years. I would go to Hot Wheels shows. I would do a car occasionally, but basically it was PR and things like that. So 50. I think it ended up at 52 years.
Wow, that's quite a run.
One job. Yeah,
that's quite a
you
run.
don't see that very often these days, do you?
And what's no, you don't. But what's really cool is the guy that you followed was kind of legendary in the design world. So it's like. Yeah. I mean, everybody looks at you as this guy, and it's like, look who I got to follow.
Exactly,
Holy smokes, that's quite amazing.
And the first 16, of course, are the really rare ones because they only made X amount of them and everything. And there's a huge following of Hot Wheel collectors, and they'll pay good money. I mean, there's one Volkswagen bus that the guy's paid $100,000 for it, and it's still around, and he's asking like $175 for it now, and he won't sell it. He's just he just wants to say I got the most expensive one, which is cool. I mean,
I had him. I got him. I remember back in '68. I was 5 years old.
That was the first year
I started getting them, and they I had never seen them before. I remember because I remember the Matchboxes, and I remember I was a little kid at a store, and I remember going,
you're the perfect customer.
It's like it's hot rod stuff. My dad was already bringing home Hot Rod magazine, so
you're the perfect customer.
I was that kid.
The story is that, again, Elliott Handler was pushing these Hot Wheels, and everybody at Mattel said, it'll never sell. Don't worry. Don't. So they had a quota of like 25,000, something like that. And supposedly they went to Toy Fair, and the first guy in was from Sears, and he said, I'll take 100,000 of them. It was like, get to work. So they actually flew a guy to Hong Kong because we couldn't make them fast enough here. So they flew a guy to Hong Kong. He had model kits, and we had customized model kits on we wanted. And they started building the patterns and the tools and everything in Hong Kong. When I started Mattel, they were actually building them behind Mattel, the little building back there where they would build the Hot Wheels, because they weren't millions of them. They were just starting to make them. And then they went to Hong Kong, and then they went to Malaysia and China and all the other places where you could make them at a reasonable price. Because if you notice, they're still $1. They were $1 and under $1 in '68. What else can you buy that is roughly the same price as it was?
And I went and bought Hot Wheels. It's like, or work just like, I want to go buy Hot Wheel.
You're the perfect customer, and there was kids all over the world like that. And then, I don't know if you want to get into the Snake and Mongoose story, but in the beginning '70s, they came to me and says, we're going to sponsor a drag race team. Okay, it sounds fun. So why don't you go meet these two guys and find out what the cars are going to look like, and we'll do the design and everything on it. So it was Perdome and McEwen, and I actually went when the cars were being built. I saw the cars, just the chassis and the bodies and everything. And I didn't do the graphics on the cars. I'm not sure if that was done at Mattel or somewhere else, but I did the Hot Wheel cars of their cars. And we did the racetrack where the parachute came out and everything. Plus, I'd go to the drag races and work with those guys. I mean, after a while, they're my heroes. You'd go to the race and watch them race. These guys would be running, almost 200 miles an hour in a car. Wow, that was great stuff. Neat guys. They would come to Mattel once in a while and show up and tell stories and everything. And if you ever saw the movie, they've got a guy playing me in the movie, and I show up and I do a sketch. Well, the sketch is mine. It isn't me. I did the sketch here. So they used my sketch and everything.
That's
it was
so
pretty
cool.
Yeah, it was very good. And then we got Kyle Petty do NASCAR. We've done, we owned the longest jump. We did it in Indianapolis. We've done the loop in downtown LA. I don't know if you ever saw that. Two cars did the orange loop in downtown LA. So they've done some pretty cool stuff, And then they started to build the full-size Hot Wheels. They did they started with the twin mill, with Carson knows all that story, and then we did the NASCAR car. We did Petty's cars. We did I did my Bone Shaker, which is the kind of the classic hot rod, and I think we have about a dozen full-size cars now. We take them all over the United States.
Okay, so let's talk about our friend Carson. So. He's kind of how I got to come down here to the top secret Elwoods Garage here was Carson. So you guys worked together for a while.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, you'll have to get Carson's version on it, but all I know is this car guy showed up one day and it was great. It went from being, oh geez, we're going to do another car, to let's do this car and let's meet these people and do this.
So he got it. He understood the car.
And it was perfect timing because we were doing the collector cars. So it was a combination of timing for the cars and timing for have a car guy show up. So it took the thing 100% on a different direction. We did some fun stuff.
So 52 years of making kids toys.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
You're the Santa Claus of car guys.
I'm getting paid to draw hot rods and customs.
But I mean, you're Santa Claus for car kids. I mean, that's just like, you're the guy.
But you talk about a job that somebody needed and a guy that needed to do that job. I mean, perfect. Right. It ended up perfect for everybody. I mean, they can't complain.
You weren't getting in trouble for drawing blowers and side pipes.
Exactly. I was doing exactly what I wanted to draw, So it was unbelievable. And then I ended up buying this garage, I've had it for like 25 years. I just got tired of building cars in my driveway and having the kids come out and take my tools or the car sitting in the rain or something. So one day I came down here and I saw this place up for sale. It was junk. It was bullet holes in it, and it was just terrible. It was perfect. So I got it dirt cheap at the time, and just came in and started. It just kept getting more and more stuff. At one time these walls didn't have anything on them, and they only had one car in here. Now I can't even move in here. We've got too many cars and too much stuff.
I love this.
That's what happens. It just gets out of control.
Thank you for letting me come down here and talk to you. This is something I wanted to do for a long time. We had talked about it for a while, but it was like, well, it kind of had to be the right time, and it just seemed like the right time to do this.
Well, that's one thing nice about being retired. You can do anything you want.
Thank you again very much, sir.
Anytime. Thanks, buddy.
Okay.
Good stuff.
So you're up. So we're sitting here in the Elwoods Garage, and fortunate enough, or I'm not sure. We'll say fortunate enough to have you join us here, Carson. So
there's no show I can't ruin.
We've had you on the podcast, and it was great. It was whether we're talking about marketing or presenting yourself or but you were part of the Hot Wheels history too. So working with Larry, you were part of this whole thing. So how did you come on board? How did that happen?
Started a computer-based product development company, and Mattel was one of my big clients because toys are fast-moving and have to be done quickly. That was a venture capital-based company. Was supposed to go public and have big things happen during the dot-com crash. I got out right before that because I was doing so much work for Mattel at the time. The guy, Gene Inslee, great guy. Gene, if you're out there, hello, thank you for everything. Was a vice president of worldwide engineering, and he made me an offer to come to Mattel. I went to lunch with him, and he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to have fun."
And that's how the Mattel thing.
Yeah, and I said, "I want to have fun." He said, "Well, toys are fun." I said, "Gene, you would hire me?" And he said, "Yeah, all the stuff you did at compression engineering and the rapid product development, I need that at Mattel." So he made me an offer. He said, "The opening I have right now is in Disney Entertainment. Are you a Disney fan?" I said, "I'm a huge Disney fan. My family's a huge Disney fan. We have great history with Disney, my dad and his friends and stuff." So I was director of product development and engineering for the Disney Entertainment division of Mattel. Try to fit that on one business card. So we did all the games, puzzles, action figures, toys, plush, everything for every Disney movie. Very fast paced, entertainment based. We'd get briefs, we'd design products. I ran the engineering, worked with Catherine Demas, who ran the design group, and we'd just plow through work. But Gene had told me when I took that job, and what he enticed me with, he said, "I got a feeling the Hot Wheels job is going to become open." And he knew me as a car guy. He was a car guy. He always had nice Corvettes and stuff. And about a year and a half to 2 years into it, the Hot Wheels job became open. But I knew Larry Wood from early times and from car culture before.
Okay, I was just going to ask.
Because I was always into cars. Anybody knows me knows I grew up around drag strips, and we talked about McEwen and Prudhomme, and I met them when I was 12, and 63, 64, I was hanging out at Lions almost every weekend.
You already knew Larry then.
I knew Larry, and I knew who Larry was. I knew the Hot Wheels story of Larry. So at Mattel, at the design center was a separate building from the corporate headquarters, and so I was always in the design center in the engineering group. But the hot rod car guys, all the Hot Wheels guys, had a little bench out on the loading dock that was all filled with stickers. STP, Torco, Edelbrock, all the stickers. It was covered with all the stickers. You go to the race, get stickers, you put them on this bench. And we would eat our lunch there. There was a cafeteria there. And we'd eat our lunch there. And so I slowly, within a couple of weeks to a couple of months of working there, migrated out of the corporate environment of the tower and would work over to the design center, because those were the cool guys, and that's where the car guys were, and I'd sit at lunch with them. And Larry confirmed that this job was going to become available. The director of design was going to become available. And Larry and about 3 or 4 other designers petitioned the big boss, John Handy, who was senior VP, that we know who I want our next boss to be. We have this guy, Carson Lev, runs the Disney Entertainment Group, but he's a car guy. He's a diehard car guy, knows his stuff, knows the people. And so my claim to fame, one of the greatest compliments I have, was I got recruited by Mr. Hot Wheels to be his boss.
That's awesome.
So yeah, and so I came in as director of design for the racing and collectible side of the business. My counterpart was Nathan Proch, who ran the dollar car, the regular car that you see in the regular packages, and track sets. My thing was to create authenticity in the car culture. My impassioned speech is, we're not a toy company, we're a car company. We just happen to make smaller cars. We make more cars in a year than all the other OEMs have ever made in their lifetimes. So therefore, we reflect car culture better. Kids would rather have a Hot Wheels car than any other real car on the road. And so my spin was always, quit thinking of this as toys, think of this as car culture. And from that, I was able to build a career from not just design, but going to licensing and building full-scale cars like the Twin Mill and the DR2, going to SEMA, making wheels and tires and car wax and apparel for adults that are Hot Wheels fans.
They're still Hot Wheels people.
So yeah, so that's how I ended up at Hot Wheels. And so when I was there running design with Larry and the group, we had the Ferrari license, we had Harley Davidson, we had most of the NASCAR teams, we had most of the Formula One teams. But for me, that wasn't enough. For my big push, because I'm a drag racing and Salt Flats guy, I was like, let's do some drag racing stuff. Let's do some Mickey Thompson stuff. Let's do some historic race cars. Let's do some customs. Let's do some lowriders. Let's branch this brand out. I don't care if it's a niche group or a core group. Let's try to respond to be the all things to all car guys. That was the goal.
And I'm sure you and Larry have some great stories.
Larry and I had a lot of fun. I mean, we still have fun. We had a nice balance and kind of relationship of, number one, I was smart enough to know that I got recruited by Larry to be his boss, which is kind of a weird thing where somebody says, hey, I want you to be my boss. But I never took my position as I was his boss. I told people we all work for Larry. Larry's the guy who carried that torch and kept that candle lit for 20 years when nobody else was there. Larry was the guy who did not just the marketing, but did the packaging, did the instructions, did the illustrations. Larry was the guy. So I was just lucky enough that because of Larry, that brand migrated and grew big enough that there was a job for me to do. And I feel the same way about Prudhomme and McEwen, having met them when I was about 11 or 12 at the drags. And they really put the brand on the map, with kids in a household kind of way, not just a niche of playing with toys. They became household legends and drag racing legends, and it put Hot Wheels on the map, and we put them on the map. And it was very balanced and symbiotic back in the day, and it did some great things for the brand. And it showed the brand had passion, but it also, the thing I was trying to follow on, to me, this wasn't something I invented. It showed that Hot Wheels wanted to be authentic. Hot Wheels wanted to be involved in real car racing, not just sell toys like everybody else was.
Well, heck, I'm just going to come over here and sit
Okay.
down. So you're just going to take my spot here, Larry, and... All right, well, I'm going to go sit down.
Okay. So when we were there, the one thing Larry and I definitely shared was passion. We like to express that passion. We're not guys who we get excited, we get animated, but we think that everybody should be excited and animated. And if they're not, he and I both understood that sometimes you need things that are kind of like a project or something that's visual that people can get excited about, and they can. It's kind of like you're raising your flag, And the thing was the gas station we decided to build.
Yep. Well, up to that, we had the usual office with the cubicle, little cubicles all around, and I don't even know if we even had a Hot Wheel logo or anything around.
No, there was nothing.
Yeah, it was just a basic, like everybody else.
If you took the toys out of it, it could have been any business.
Exactly. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So John, my boss, John Handy, who's the big boss, came to me and said, "Look, I have a project outside of design. I need you to run this little construction thing we're going to do. I need a new conference room for the Hot Wheels team. And I need two or three offices, and a place where we can do presentations, like a board,
table.
Yeah,
big table.
So I said, well, John, does it have to be like an office like all these other ones? And so every guy would take their own cubicle and put their own stuff in there, drawings and stuff, but it was basically the same cubicles. I said, well, can we build a gas station? If you think about it, the gas station should be a metaphor for Hot Wheels. We can kind of do it like it's a desert oasis in the middle of nowhere. You found this oasis that's Hot Wheels, and that's a story about the mural we'll talk in a minute. You could have the engine bay area or the work bay to be the conference room. The front area could be the office, and the outside where the gas pumps are, we'll have a table. That'll be the presentation thing. So we sketched it up loosely. We took it to operations. We budgeted it, and then the guy basically said, I don't care what it costs. It will cost no more than regular construction will cost you to put cubicles and put an office in here anyway. So we built a gas station. So we kind of conspired and drew it up together. And
we had gas pumps on either end.
Yep.
A stainless steel table, if I remember right. And then below the table was
oil cans.
And Hot Wheel products.
Right, on display. Yeah. And it was had an awning in front. Had an awning that came curved, in front. Yep. Curved in front. Had the big Hot Wheels sign on. And then in the conference room was the little, where you'd be like a service bay. And that place with a little office of it was like an office.
Had lights in the
inside of it, canned lights, and we found replica gas pumps. I made the graphics for them. Larry had the neon sign. So we got all that done. So then I came with the idea that, okay, everybody on staff should have an oil can. Make your own oil can, put your label on it, and put it in the oil can rack. And if you're off that day or you're not working, you get fired, you're canned. You take your can and get out of here. And
everybody had their
own, and they got to design their own. I still have mine. I still got mine. Was Carson's Midnight Oil, because I was famous for working late on projects. Yeah. And so everybody made their own can, and it was kind of cool.
Yeah, mine was Elwoods Snake Oil.
Yes, Elwoods Snake Oil, yep. And so once the gas station started going together, I forget his name, Patrick Kittle.
Oh, the guy.
Ran facilities and operations for construction stuff.
Job.
Great guy. And he made a lot of props for us for Toy Fair, too. So he came in and he said, look, we got a budget to paint these walls, too. What do you think if we do like a background scene? What would you want? I said, okay, I already got this figured out in my head because it came up in the gas station discussion. It should be like a gas station in the middle of the desert, but it should be telling a story. So it should start from the desert on this wall. And this wall was probably 120 feet long, maybe 30 feet high. It's got to start in the desert, and it goes along the desert, and then you see a few lights and a few more, and then here's the gas station with hills in the background, and then as you turn the corner, there's Hollywood, the Hollywood sign, and stars and neon. And so it told a story that this was automotive Mecca.
That was the whole wall.
It was the whole wall. Yeah. I mean, it probably had literally over 400 linear feet of wall, 30 foot high all the way, and it kind of told a story. And so once that got going, all the other groups got jealous. Yeah, so the Barbie girls had to build like a Barbie dream house.
Exactly.
The entertainment group that did stuff for movies outright, and the Boys Toys group had to have a movie marquee, like a movie theater marquee.
They would change the name.
And they changed the name of their project they were working on. And then the games and puzzles built like giant dice and game pieces. Yeah. So we kind of started a disruptive trend there to personalize the place.
One of the cool things about our gas station is we would bring in cars.
Yes.
Remember, we would bring in
cars.
Couldn't be a big car.
Yeah.
I had my 1914 Harley in there for a while. Like we had his T-bucket. I don't remember.
We had John Handy's Handy Hog in there.
Yep. We had the bike. And so we had cars in the gas station every time you came by. So people would wander over all the time to see what car was in there.
In fact, when we did the Ed Roth approvals, we did them right there.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, when Ed Roth came to get the final approval on those things.
So, but it was great working in a gas station.
Yeah.
Drawing, and I'd turn around, there was a gas station with pumps all lit up and everything.
Yep, I have one of the globes in my office at home, and I think you have one of the globes. Because unfortunately,
sooner or later, put in offices.
Individual passion is something that's like a catalyst to a fuel. The fuel may work well by itself, but sometimes you need some nitro with the alcohol. Sometimes you need some boost in there. And so Larry and I always kind of viewed our jobs as like catalyst or boost. Like, what can we do to get these guys really excited? So that was kind of the thing we did from the passion side. And so that passion carried over to a lot of stuff, from presentations at Toy Fair to discussions with automotive designers and artists and projects we wanted to do. And it really kind of led up. Well, the Twin Mill really was started before I went there. And so during my interview, when I went from Disney Entertainment to Hot Wheels, John Handy, who was the big senior VP of design, said at the end of the interview, "Do you have any other questions?" And I said, "Well, yeah, what happened to the Twin Mill?" And he said, "Why would you screw up a perfectly good interview?" And I said, "Well, that car was started, so the Twin Mill was the first originally designed Hot Wheels. In the first couple of years of Hot Wheels, they were, Barracudas, Cougars, Challengers, Camaros, not Challenger, Charger, a Beatnik Bandit, a real car made into a toy. Ira Guilford designed that car. Ira worked in the Corvette studio. That's why it kind of looked like a Corvette. And Twin Mill meant two motors and two big back wheels in it, almost like a steamroller. But it was a very beautiful one-off car. It was the first car originally designed as a Hot Wheels original design, not made after another car. So they started for the 30th anniversary, I think, to build that as a full-scale car. It was done at Boyd's. Chip was design director on the project. Yep. And then you could tell this part when you get the call from Chip.
We would go down there every once in a while and make sure everything was going along. And then one night, I got a phone call from Chip Foose saying, Boyd is bankrupt. They're going to come shut the door, lock the doors, and they're going to auction everything off. Get down here first thing in the morning. So I called up a tow truck company and I said, be there at 7 o'clock in the morning. Chip was inside. He rolled the roll-up door up. We rolled the Twin Mill up onto the flatbed truck and took off. And sure enough, that day they shut the place down. It was the end of Boyd's. He had no money or plans to do anything with it after that. So it came to Mattel and it sat in the backyard out. I mean, it had a tarp on it, but even that got ripped and torn apart and everything.
Deteriorating.
Oh, the motors, the blown motors.
The motors we had to toss the motors. Yeah, they got so much rain in them.
Yeah,
we had to toss the motors.
Supercharged, all polished motors were gone. The body was gone.
So John gave me the charter. He says, "Okay, Smarty Pants."
That's when you came in.
Yeah, that's my first day as Hot Wheels director of design. He says, "Okay, it's your project now. It's yours. You get it." And I said, "Well, John, what's my budget?" He goes, "You don't have a budget." He says, "You have a lot of enthusiasm, but you don't have a budget." I said, "How am I going to do this?" He goes, "Well, that's for you to figure out. There's your first challenge." So I made a few calls. I talked to a few people. One of the people I did talk to was Chip, and Chip said, "Look, back in the day, Bob Larrivee in Championship Auto Shows, Bob Larrivee Jr. and Sr., they financed the building of the Red Baron, the Tom Daniels design, to take on car shows and make a model kit and make money and promote it at car shows. Talk to them." So I talked to Bob Larrivee Jr., great guy. Late Bob passed away a few years ago. Great guy. And I gave him this proposal. Look, I have this car. It started. The body's been done. In fact, it's funny. The body was done by a company called Prototype Express in Santa Barbara. That was one of my classmates at Long Beach State Design School. Bruce Brackman had built that body. And the windows were already done. The frame was done. The engines were in there, but everything else was unfinished. No interior, wasn't wired, wasn't plumbed, wasn't fired, was rough, unpainted, rough epoxy body under a tarp. So I told Bob what I have, and without even looking at it, he said, "I'll do it." Because what we were able to do was give him a little bit of money, seed money, to start it and make die-cast cars that he could sell. Yeah. Those die-cast cars as premiums would sell for anywhere between $10 and $20 each. And I remember in the Twin Mill, we made it in 3 colors, red, white, and blue, because that's what he asked for. So at every auto show, championship auto shows, they sold those cars. So the car was picked up and shipped to Barry Lobeck's shop. And Barry did the hydraulic canopy. He had a guy do the exhaust and did a couple other things. And then it went to a company called Karen Industries in Detroit that built concept cars. And they did all the finish work, the paint, the interior and stuff. And so I would make trips back and forth all the time. And it's interesting because usually you take a full-size car and you make a replica that's smaller than
the way we would do it.
The way it's normally done. We took a toy car and turn it into a real car, which is, there's a lot of questions that have to be answered, like leg room. Is the steering wheel in the right place? Do you have enough head clearance? Is it long enough? Where do you put the motor mounts? Where's it, So this thing had 2 motors in it. It had a Bell Huey helicopter starter motor, and it looked like a washing machine motor, about this big around, that was 36 volts. Then when you pushed the button to start, it charged up 3 batteries and charged it, and then the minute the motor started, it went back to 12 volt, had a switching current in it. It had a plate, an engine plate firewall that was 1.5 inch thick steel that the 2 motors were pocketed into. The flywheels were in there, and the starter motor that had the giant cylinder that shoved out about 3 inches for this gear that was probably 2 inches, 3 inches long to start this thing was made by the same guy who made transfer plates for tractor pullers.
Yeah,
when they have 5 or 6 inches together.
Yeah, it was chains, wasn't it?
It had a chain and a gear drive. The chain ran around the primary, and the gears ran off the starter. So when it started,
Turbo 400 behind it.
Turbo 400 behind it. So those 2 motors went into one through a giant gear arrangement, almost like a Swiss watch. The interesting thing when you started that thing, it didn't matter if engine number 1 wanted to start or engine number 2, or if engine 1 got gas first or number 2. They were hard linked together. So if one started, the other one's going to be spinning. Yeah. And it sounded like you had a bunch of lug nuts in a dishpan. It was just rattling until it started, then it sounded great. But when it was starting up, it was crazy.
My best story about that car is you at SEMA show driving it.
Passing the 2 policemen. Yeah, this is pretty funny. So we get this car all done. Yeah, I'm a goofball. I always expanding the brand. So I went to John and said, John, we were going to build this car for the 30th anniversary for the Hot Wheels convention. It's 35th is coming up, but 35th isn't quite here yet. Let's do something different with that car. We got a couple years till that. Let's take it to SEMA. Well, SEMA's the automotive show. And John, as he often did, laughed at me and mocked me and said, Carson, SEMA is an automotive show. I said, yeah, and I'd already done my big impassioned speech about we're a car company, we're not a toy company, we're the world's coolest car company, we make more cars in a year than they do, and all that stuff. I said, I want to go to SEMA, but I want to go there tongue-in-cheek. I want to go there kind of like playing on ourselves, but acting like we're a car company. So I'm going to put the car in there, but if you don't mind, I want to also do a presentation like, what if Hot Wheels was a car company? What would our wheels look like? What would our clothing look like? What would our tools look like? What would motor oil look like? What would car wax look like? What would it look like if we were in that business? And we'll just do it for fun. So he said, we had a big design staff back in those days, probably 40 to 50 people total. He said, I'll give you those guys for 2 days, go to them and give them this project. So we met in the bullpen, said, here's what we're taking this car to SEMA. I want each of you guys for the next 2 days to just do nothing but expand the brand. What if we made car wax? What if we made tools? And so people generated ideas, beautiful drawings. Yeah. The idea then was to just take the drawings and put them on the walls. I went back to John. I'm that guy who went to my dad or my mom every day for $1 instead of asking for $7 in a week. I do the incremental build. So I went to John. I said, okay, if we're going to have the car there and drawings, we got to have products. Let me mock up some of these. Let me get a company to make us apparel, just like samples, just for us. Let me get a company to mock up a car wax. Let me get a company to make some phony wheels and we'll put logos on them. Let me have a company make a toolbox. And he says, oh my God, he goes, your budget just keeps going bigger and bigger. But John, if we're going to do this, we can't go there half-half.
And we also had a sign that said the world's coolest car company.
World's coolest car company. That was our mantra.
Gimmick for
right. Because we'd said that in a meeting, and then the next year marketing, Larry and I hit on that. The next year marketing had it on the packages, which we thought, hey, they know a good idea when they steal one. That's okay. Hey, at least they were listening to us, right? Yeah. So we took the car there. The car was the hit of SEMA. But I was under very specific instructions. And that car came off the trailer. You are to drive it right into the show. You are not to put it on the street. You're not to go anywhere. No photo stuff. No nothing that's being unveiled. That car is not to be seen. To which I said, okay. I never said, and I got back into the conversation with John about this. I said, John, you realize when you asked me that, I said, okay. That means I comprehend. It didn't mean I agree. It's like when, Japanese people say hi, it doesn't mean yes. It means I comprehend. So I played that, translation thing on him. So the car comes out of the trailer. I'm with Dave Sanders in the Hot Wheels collector group and the .com group. I said, God, and they have a video camera, their video, and I said, we can't do this. We're not just this. I want people to know this is a driving car because people thought it was a pushmobile, just a push around.
You couldn't even see past the motors.
You could. It was like a tiny little thing. You had 2 big motors. When the canopy comes down, you're just squashed in there. I said, we're driving it on the street, and they said, dude. Handy gave it, we're not allowed to do it. I said, you guys do whatever you want to. I'm driving this car on the street. So they got in the pickup truck in front that one of the guys had and put a camera in the back, probably Kevin Fitzgerald. And we drove out on the back through Joe Brown behind the convention center. And as I'm turning out the corner, you got to be careful because the thing has a long nose. I'm going really slow.
No ground clearance.
there's a cop out there directing traffic. And he's like, yeah, this is badass. It's SEMA, it's Vegas, right? So he gives me the thumbs up, so we're driving. So we go down Joe Brown, we go down behind the parking structure, and now I'm making the turn, I'm going down Vegas Boulevard. And that thing sounds like a top fueler. I mean, it's got 2 big block blown motors in it. It's just rumpity, and we're coming down, and there's a policeman on the side of the road who literally is just getting ready to get back on his motorcycle after giving somebody a ticket. He's putting his little ticket book in the back, and he looks up, and he's got this look at me, and he puts it in, and he's shaking his head like, what? I know this is Vegas. And then he gives me one of these. He gives me the hand like, I don't see this.
Go.
But the interpretation I took was, how do I write a ticket for you being stupid? What's penal code for stupid? And as I drove by, he's just like, where do you go in Vegas?
It's SEMA.
In SEMA, do you pass 2 cops where one gives you the thumbs up for the other one? And then the first cop, came back around as we loaded in. I got a picture of me talking to him as we're rolling the car. And so we rolled it in. The car overheated. I puked antifreeze all over the exhibit area. They were all pissed about that. And so we put the display up there. The car was the hit of the show. We did 7 live interviews there, about 4 or 5 for like news, NBC News in Vegas and stuff, weather stuff, local reports. Allegedly, it's a very serious fine if you start a car during the SEMA show. It's a no-no. You're not supposed to start a car, and the fire marshal will be all over it. The Las Vegas fire marshal came to me when we started it probably 5 or 6 times. The Las Vegas fire marshal came to me more than half the times and said, hey, would you do me a favor and start that car for my friends again?
We also made a car especially for SEMA.
Yes.
And we would stand there and sign and give away a car. Right. And we had the longest lines of anybody at SEMA. Yeah. They would just go down the block like an hour beforehand. Yeah. Everybody would come in and they'd get the car. And we ran out of cars. Of course, that was the end of it. But those cars are worth $300, $400, $500 now.
So we have all this stuff on display. We have the car. We have media coming in all the time. We're firing the car up, annoying everybody. The people that are hardcore fans are loving it. Yep. And so friends of mine in the automotive industry, Kevin from KMC Wheels comes up, a guy I went to high school with, and said, Carson, when did Hot Wheels start making wheels? I go, no, those are mock-ups. He goes, well, why don't you come to me? I'll license those. Then the Holloways from Mothers. When did you start making wax? We'll license that as wax. Then Pit Pass and Apparel. Tools. It turned into licensing. So that was on Tuesday where my friends all came up, and car guys I've known my whole life, and said, well, license? Well, I'm not in licensing. I'm running design, right? So I called back to the office, and they said, you're going to have to talk to Matt because no one's going to send a licensing attorney or a licensing negotiator out to the SEMA show. It's not the licensing show. So I finally get Matt on the phone. Matt Bousquet was the president of Mattel at that time. I said, Matt, I'm here at the SEMA show and I need a licensing attorney. He goes, Carson, you said you're at the SEMA show. You're not a licensing. I go, well, the Twin Mill is so successful that people want to license. So he sent Jeffrey Orridge out, who was one of the licensing attorneys. And in 4 days, we signed 4 deals that equated to lots of money on guarantees and advances on wheels, tires, clothing, wax. The wax alone was hugely successful. And so had a great week, TV, interviews, drove the car. At the end of that week, we drove the car around the Vegas Speedway 8 laps and 2 or 3 passes down the drag strip. And you can find that on the Rides documentary.
Licensing became a department of itself.
Yes, it did.
I mean, you go in there now and every time you do a Ford, you got to deal with somebody. Every time you do it. In fact, speaking of licensing, in the very beginning, for the first X amount of years, I never got okay from anything. I could do a Ford, I could do a Chevy, do anything I wanted. And I did a little freelance work for a friend of mine, and it ended up being the ZZ Top 34 Ford on the Eliminator video, the red car with the Z's on the side. Right. Well, I helped design that car. I did a scoop on the side and did and I didn't know who ZZ Top was or anything. And they came to me after we were working on it for a while, and they said they want to put ZZ on the side. And I said, I'm not going to ruin this nice car with 2 Z's on the side of it. So I said, that's not my thing. So somebody else came up with it. They did a terrific job, of course. And then it showed up in the video, and then it made sense why they wanted the Z's on the car. So I'm drawing a car, and I'm getting a feeling for the car. And I said, wait a minute, I'll do a 34 Ford with the Billy's ZZ's on the side of it. So I did the 34 Ford, put the Z's on the side, produced it. Well, they have one hell of a lawyer.
Those entertainment guys.
Oh, boy. So I got called into a room and was told that you did this without licensing permission. I didn't know anything about licensing permission. I just was doing these cars, and I knew I worked on the car, so I did it for Billy. Well, I got a letter saying, don't do that again.
Yes, cease and desist.
Yes, exactly. That was, we found the offender.
Yeah.
Was the letter.
Well, to the licensing point, too, the famous story about the Corvette.
Oh, yeah.
So Harry Bentley Bradley, before he worked for Mattel, was in the Corvette studio. Yeah. Harry had crutches. He was a childhood polio victim. And he knew when they talked about wanting to do the new Corvette, Harry said, well, I can still get into the design center because I know they leave the back door open so the smokers can go out on the dock and smoke, and we'll just go in there and I'll get the drawings because I mean, I've only been gone a couple months. They'll let me back in. And Mattel allegedly sent a Mattel attorney with him.
That's what I heard.
Why would you send an attorney when you're doing a crime?
And the attorney was scared to death. He wouldn't even get out of the car.
Harry walked in, said hi to everybody, knew where the drawings were, took the top off his crutches. They were aluminum. Rolled up the drawings, stuck them down in his crutches, and walked out the door. And then what happened, that car came out as a Hot Wheel before it came out as a Corvette.
Yeah.
And so the Chevrolet executives kind of lit them up, to which Mattel reminded them, that car is selling really well. In fact, that car's connective tissue is helping you sell your car.